going on, Only Playbook fans? We are back for another draft positional ranking episode. Today, we are doing our top 10 running backs. A little bit more running backs to talk about in this class relative to the quarterbacks last week. So we're going to dive through our top 10 rankings. Joining me again is my good buddy, Jake. Jake, how did you feel about the running back class when you did your scouting?
I think there are some really good players in here that can contribute. I don't think it's an incredibly strong running back class. Really, I think the strength of this class is defense and receiver. We're going to get to receiver. We'll go through our top 10 next week on those. That's in a group I'm really excited to talk about. I think there's a lot of good players in that group. Running backs, I think there are some players here that could contribute, though. Are we looking at, the next superstar running back? I think there's one that I think is definitely going to be that. But some of these other guys, I think there are some opportunities for them to plug in, play in different areas, and might could fit systems pretty well. So, I would say overall not great, not bad, though.
Yeah, I felt the same way. A couple of top prospects are pretty high end. And then I do think a lot of these lower end prospects in the rankings have like their niche, like whether they're third down players or like first down bruisers, they all have like specialties in how they are going to help an NFL team. So it's really going to be about fit, play style, and, wherever your landing spot's ultimately going to be. But with that being said, Jake, we have our top 10 running backs. I'll let you kick us off. Give me any honorable mentions you may have, run through your list, and then I'll go through mine, and then we'll talk about whoever we want to talk about.
Yeah, so I just have two honorable mentions here. So I got Jaden Ott with Oklahoma and Le'Veon Moss with Texas A&M.
Okay.
Both of those guys were very close to making the list for me. There's just a few other guys I like slightly better than them. Honestly, I think my 7 through honorable mentions, I could kind of interchange a lot of these guys. But just running through the list real quick, then we can kind of chat through them. Number one, very obvious, Jeremiyah Love. I think he is by far the best player in this class. So, and at any position, not just the quarterback position. I have Jonah Coleman as my number 2. So I kind of went back and forth between him and Jadarian Price, who I have at 3. Both of them, I think there's different parts of their game that I like. Emmett Johnson's at 4 from Nebraska. I have Kaytron Allen and Nic Singleton at 5 and 6. Very comparable players. Yep. I have Desmond Claiborne from Wake Forest at my 7. I have Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas at 8. I think it's Roman Hemby from Indiana at 9. And then Jamari Taylor, kind of a little bit off the wall here from Virginia. But as I was watching him, there was actually quite a bit I liked there. So I actually slid him in at the 10 slot.
Okay. So somewhat similar list, but we do have a couple of differences. And I think Hemby was one I watched, didn't make my list, but I didn't hate him. It was just I couldn't find a spot for him in my top 10. So he was one of my honorable mentions. But my top 10, number 1, Jeremiyah Love, without a doubt. He's a really, really good, top end, high caliber. It could be, maybe the best player in this draft, maybe not named Mendoza. I don't know if you could even take him over Mendoza if you're just really talking about the player for the position he plays. Running back's obviously never going to be as high value when it comes to, drafting relative to the quarterback position, but Love is there. I have Jadarian Price as number 2. So Jeremiyah Love's backup at Notre Dame is actually the number 2 ranked running back prospect that I have in my top 10. So flip from you had Jonah Coleman 2, Price 3. I have Jonah Coleman 3, Price 2. Jonah Coleman from Washington is my number 3. We both have the same number 4, Emmett Johnson, Nebraska, represent. So you had Kaytron Allen number 5 and Nic Singleton number 6. I have Nic Singleton number 5, Penn State running back. I have Damon Claiborne from Wake Forest, who you had 7. I have him at number 6. And then my number 7, who you don't have on your list, LJ Martin from BYU. I don't know if you watched any of him. I have him at number 7. Yeah. I have Seth McGowan, running back from Kentucky, at number 8. Another guy I don't think you have on your list. Kaytron Allen, who you did have at 5. He is my 9th running back. And I think Mike Washington Jr. out of Arkansas, you had 7 or 8. He's my 10th running back. So we do have a good amount of overlap. We have a couple of players that you had on your rankings that I didn't. I have one that you didn't. So I'll let you kick it off first. I believe maybe you had Hemby on your top 10?
Yes, he was at 9. So number 10, I had Jamari Taylor, but yeah, Hemby was at 9. I think he's an all-around pretty solid player. There isn't anything that really jumps off the charts with him for me. But I think he's just really well-versed. I think he has a lot of balance to his game. He can run routes. He can run between the tackles. He's not necessarily elite at anything. There was nothing that stood out where I was like, wow, this is what he's going to specialize in the league. which does give me a little worry. He's not going to be a player that can fill one specific slot. But I think he is kind of a rotational back that could be a pretty good piece. Didn't really get hurt very often. He played a lot of snaps in Indiana. And I just think he's an all-around solid player, top to bottom, that can do everything pretty well. So that's why I felt like he kind of fit in there over some of my honorable mentions that I had and some of the other guys. It's just kind of the consistency of play. Some of that could be the Indiana team as a whole. I mean, that offensive line was a juggernaut. There aren't going to be many teams that can push the way they did in the NFL. But I still think there's a potential here that this guy could go pretty late round and end up being a contributor in some capacity with someone.
Okay. A couple of guys that I had that you did not have on your list. I have Seth McGowan from Kentucky at my number 8 running back, 6'1", 215. So pretty big size for a running back. He did have some off-field concerns. I believe he was jailed for 3 months in 2021. So there's definitely some, off the field issues for, and that's automatically going to rule him off of some teams' big boards, right? A lot of teams will just not mess with players that have off field concerns and character issues, stuff like that. But despite that was in 2021, 4 years ago. Here's a guy that I think has a lot of good footwork. He's not the fastest player in the NFL or not the fastest running back coming into the draft, but he has great play speed. Like he's for his size, it does seem like he has the ability to run away from defenders. It does seem like he has the ability to make defenders miss, but it's just that he's probably not going to run like a 4.4 or 4.3 or anything like that. So that's going to be, if teams are concerned about that may be a thing, but he has burst, he has agility. He's a good processor too. That was my thing, is he was very patient, able to process the defense and wait for the hole to open up, or if there wasn't a hole, just kind of take what the defense gives you. So that was one thing I liked. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that he is a little bit older. So that's why I think he'd be an immediate contributor into the NFL. So are we seeing the best of Seth McGowan already? Possibly. But like we talk about with running backs, a lot of running backs come into the NFL ready to play, right? It's just about where they're going to fit and how they're going to be utilized. And I think Seth McGowan is one that does have the ability to come in and immediately be a contributor. Doesn't do anything incredibly, but I do think he sees the field well. He has good burst, good agility, and that's a size for a running back that I think is going to be an advantage. So at 6'1", 215 for a running back that can still have fast enough play speed, I do really like him, and that's why he was number 8 for me. And then number 7 for me, Jake, was LJ Martin, who you also didn't have on your top 10. BYU, another big running back, 6'2", 220. He is, and the thing is, with that size, he is violent. He is a violent runner. He runs you over. I just think there's always going to be a place for that in the NFL. He's got a track background, so even with that size, he doesn't lack a ton of speed. He's got enough speed for his size to break away, and he also can pass block. Because of his size, he has the ability to pass block. I wouldn't say he's the best pass blocker, but definitely capable. That's something he could learn. But the way I looked at him when I watched him play is a lot of Zach Charbonnet. And I know when we think about Zach Charbonnet standalone in the NFL, we're like, he sucks. Like, he's taking playing time away from Ken Walker. But if you evaluate Zach Charbonnet as a prospect coming out of UCLA, I believe he was like my top 5 running back rankings that year. So I do think as a prospect, LJ Martin still offers a lot of upside. That size is always going to be something that's, intriguing for NFL teams. So I just think at 6'2", 220, he offers something as a first down, second down player and still has the size to be a pass protector. Didn't do a lot with catching the ball. So again, that's going to be limitations on third down. But again, Zach Charbonnet, similar thing, right? He's a goal line back. Sometimes he comes in on third down, but he has the way he's used. He specializes in certain things. And I think that's where LJ Martin can succeed and make contribution into the NFL. So that's why I had him at number 7, but
yeah, I think the big reason I left him off, kind of playing off of that, was I watched the film of the Texas Tech game. Texas Tech has a lot of guys that I think are NFL caliber players or will be in the league at some point. And I really just felt like that was one of the games where I saw him struggle quite a bit. So that was one of my big concerns, is when he faces these elite athletes, because no offense to the Big 12, it's not the Big 10 or it's not the SEC. Sure. It's still a phenomenal conference. You're playing against good teams. But it seemed like against the higher caliber teams, not that he was bad, it was just a little bit more of a drop off, where it made me think like maybe there's something here where when he plays against top end talent, he has the ability to disappear. I think he could be good as a change of pace back, though. I mean, I don't see him as a 3-down running back in the league by any means, but I think maybe the bulldozer style role, the goal line back. I definitely can see that as a good option. I had that you did not have, and I think the rest we had similar. I had Jamari Taylor from Virginia. So I've led the ACC in rushing this year. He breaks a lot of tackles. I don't know if you had the chance to really watch a lot of his film.
I did watch quite a bit.
Yeah, he can get off of tackles really well. He has pretty good speed. He can catch. So he's really somebody that can plug into a lot of different areas. I was a little worried. He spent a lot of time in FCS before coming to Virginia. Then he was at Virginia where, the ACC being the worst of the 4 conferences outside of Miami and maybe the top teams there. So the competition probably wasn't as stiff for him, but Virginia had a phenomenal year, and he was a big part of why that was the case. So he's somebody I feel like could really be a contributor, even if it's a third down back that can come in and catch passes. He runs routes pretty well, and he just has a lot of different skills. They're not top-end skills. That's why he's at 10, not a little higher up the list. But I think he just does a lot of things pretty well. So he's a guy I think is definitely somebody I would take a look at just for his ability to make people miss, has pretty good speed, and can catch the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think what I realized watching a lot of these running backs this year is a lot of them offer quite a bit of size. Like I'm seeing like heights, 6 foot plus, 200 pounds plus. You're not, at least in my top 10 and a lot of the running backs I evaluated, a lot of them weren't undersized, where Jamari Taylor, I believe he's like 5'9". Now he's still a little stocky at like 205, 210. So he's still definitely like almost like a bowling ball, if you will, but a little bit undersized relative to the rest of the pack. And so, I think 9-10, if I wanted to slide him in there, I could probably interchange him with some of these other players. But regardless, I do think he has a path in the NFL for sure. Mike Washington Jr., Jake, I had at number 10. I believe you had at 7, 8?
8. Yep, 8.
Okay, I'll let you start. Talk to me about Mike Washington Jr., 6'2", 225 out of Arkansas.
Yeah, just a pure downhill power back. Like that's what I really loved about watching him on tape is he just seems like an absolute bulldozer. Another guy that I don't think is going to be an every down back. I think that's, like you said, pretty consistent across a lot of these running backs this year. But I do think that there's a great opportunity for him to come in and plug into a system. I think of like where you have a lot of power backs, he can be the Monty to the Gibbs situation, where you have this guy that can just run people over and can kind of play that change of pace role for a lot of different teams. Short down yardage situations for those that don't have quarterbacks that like to keep it. I think he fits that role perfectly. It doesn't jump off the charts with speed, some of the other things that you would like to see. Definitely a slower player among this top 10. But I really just love his ability to be a short down or a short yardage back, really contribute on. And I think a lot of teams can use that. There aren't a lot of teams that really have that guy that can come in and just mow people over. I could also see him. They didn't really use him this way at Arkansas, but there are some people that bring these types of guys in and they play him at fullback, run fullback dives, or have him just power into the hole. I could definitely see him playing that type of role for a team. He makes very physical contact. He's really strong. So, I think he'd just be a pretty versatile player where you could plug him into a few different places and he can add value for the team.
Yeah, his physicality definitely brings the yards after contact, right? So he's never normally going down with first contact. Arm tackles aren't bringing him down. So that size is always going to be able to play even at the NFL level. Like you said, he doesn't offer the best speed, whether straight line or agility. But one thing I thought he did really well that made up for that is he's really, really quick with his hop steps. Like it's kind of similar to David Montgomery, where he doesn't have like that straight line speed or that burst through the hole. He's able to use like these small little hop steps that get away from defenders that almost makes it seem like he's a little bit quicker than he is. So at least he has that in his arsenal to make up for his lack of speed or lack of agility. And I think that's going to bode really, really well, especially like you said, if they use him for short yardage and you have a defender that, is unblocked or something, he has that little jump cut or jump step that can make that guy miss. So I think that's going to play really, really well in the NFL. And yeah, the other thing is they didn't use him much on third down, whether it was pass protection or catching the ball. So I don't know that he ever has a future for that, but like you said, another guy that could be really, really good paired with somebody that's already a Lightning, and this guy could be the Thunder. So 6'2", 225, man, there's always going to be a spot in the NFL for a guy with that size.
I haven't thought immediately with the Panthers, if we move on from a few of these guys, Brooks, I think, is the future there. I've talked about it a few times on the podcast. Everybody wants Jonathan Brooks to be the guy in Carolina. Whether that's going to end up being the case, we'll just have to see what the injury situation looks like. But bringing in a guy like this that can play the alternative power role that Brooks is not going to play for us, I think I wouldn't be upset with that situation at all, having him in Carolina for that.
Yeah, I think that's a great matchup or kind of a mix and match with the running backs there. And there's probably other situations that he would fit well in. That's why I do think he has a role in the NFL heading into 2026. You had Kaytron Allen at number 5.
I did.
Okay, I have him at number 9. So let me real quickly talk about what I saw with him, and then I'll let you talk about why you had him as 5. The biggest thing that I like about Kaytron Allen is he protects the football, so he doesn't fumble the ball much. He's got really good contact balance, 5'11", 220. He's hard to bring down, not because, I mean, he is a bigger guy, 220 is kind of like a bowling ball, but he just stays upright a lot, and that's always going to play in the NFL because he's always going to be able to get the extra couple of yards. And he's very, very violent, and my best attribute for him is if he goes into the NFL in a zone blocking run scheme, I think he's going to succeed immensely. I think he's a really, really good zone runner. So I think there is a world for him to be a first and second down back, similar to other situations. I don't know that he's got a big three down future in the NFL because he wasn't used much on third downs because Nic Singleton was there as well, and we'll get to him. But I think Kaytron Allen is the perfect, again, another guy that's thunder, that's a bruiser, that's a bowling ball. He's hard to bring down. He has a low center of gravity, and again, his contact balance is really, really good. He's hard to bring down for different reasons than the last guy we talked about, not because arm tackles or things like that, just because he knows how to keep shuffling his feet, so he's able to stay upright even with little kind of checks into the leg and things like that. So I think that's really, really impressive, and I think that's going to play into the NFL as well. But again, because he doesn't offer true three-down potential, I did feel like there were other running backs here that even if they don't offer true three-down potential in the top 5, the skills that they have and what they're really good at, they're too good at that versus Kaytron Allen. To me, he's good. He can do what he does well, but I think there's other guys that do it a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I was watching him, actually, the first person that popped into my mind was actually Braylon Allen from the Jets. I mean, it definitely kind of popped into my head that I see kind of some similar styles there and the way the two of them play. He was over 1,000 yards rushing while splitting touches, pretty much down the middle. So I think he's really shown you, number one, he can produce at a high level with limited touches. And I think he averaged a little over 6 yards per carry, if I'm remembering correctly. I think he's like 6.1, 6.2 yards per carry. I think he's a pretty well-rounded player. He's not really going to be a big pass down player. But I think he has enough agility that he can make some moves, make some guys miss. Obviously, his main attribute is that he's a bruiser. He can run people over. Almost has that Cam Scatabo-likeness to him where he can really just run through people. And he seems like he's willingly going to run through a wall, has no problem doing that. But I think his vision kind of stood out to me as well. I think he does a good job of being patient, kind of sitting behind the line and finding his spots. So that was something that I think really stood out to me about him, where once he sees the hole, he's explosive getting there. He runs with a ton of power, and he's shown he can produce in a second fiddle style role. Second 1A, 1B type situation. Right. But I think a lot of the other running backs on this list were getting primary carries. And so their stats may look a little bit better because they were getting a lot of touches. They had a lot more opportunities, a lot more snaps. He's the kind of guy that I would feel very confident taking a little bit higher than some of the others, just simply because he's shown that he isn't somebody that needs to get on the field to get going. He's somebody you can just plug in at any time. He's going to run hard. He's going to make big plays for you. He's going to give you the opportunity to, get a strong run, start the drive off right. So that's what I think really stood out for me, was just that the fact that he is a split carry running back actually made me feel a little more confident that he's able to produce at such a high level. Whereas, think of Rico Dowdle, he needs 15 touches before he starts running the ball effectively.
Yep. No, that's a great point. To have a guy that can, produce like that in his first carry, and it's not like a lot of running backs who are like, give me a lot of touches and then I'll slowly start to get going. He doesn't need that. And that's a big, big skill set to have, is if he's getting 6 touches, he's still productive with the limited 6 touches versus, like you said, Rico or even Henry. Derrick Henry's incredible, but he gets better with the more touches he has. That's not the same thing with Kaytron Allen. He's the same player, first touch to 15 touch. And I think you can appreciate that for sure. Damon Claiborne, Jake, I have him at 6. Where did you have him?
I have him at 7. So kind of right there in the same location.
Okay. So this guy plays a little bit different. This is one of the first ones that I think is a little bit different than the rest of the pack that we've talked about. He's got burst, he's got speed, and he's got breakaway speed, right? He's a decent receiver, and he can make people miss in the open space. And again, similar to Kaytron Allen in the sense that I think he would succeed in a zone run blocking scheme as well, because again, he has that you find the hole and you're gone type speed. And because of that, he's been returning punts and kicks. So he's got multifaceted usage. He could be a kick returner, he could be a punt returner, but with all this usage and slight slightly undersized at 195, ball security was a big problem for him. So that's always going to be a concern coming into the NFL is don't fumble the football. That's the easiest way to not get a job, lose your job, and not get enough touches. So I think he's a guy that offers the speed. He could almost be paired really well with some of these other guys we talked about as like he's the lightning.
Yep.
Some of this other guy could be a thunder. I don't think Damon Claiborne's again going to be a true 3-down guy just because of his size, but he does offer pass catching work. So if they really wanted him to be, he could. I just don't know how effective he would be, but I could see himself starting out as a kick returner or a punt returner and then slowly working his way into the rotation of a running back room. So what did you see with him?
Yeah, I mean, definitely feel the same way. I love the speed. I love the versatility of being able to kick, punt, return. I think that's a huge asset to have. One thing that really stood out, and I didn't really notice it until I started diving into some of the like analytics behind him as well, is his catch rate is extremely high. Okay. He does get a lot of checkdowns, but his catch rate, he doesn't drop the football very often. If it gets thrown to him, he catches the ball very frequently. I could see him in those like quick screen pass plays. McCaffrey and A-Chain have made a living on this type of an offense. I think he could be really explosive in that type of role. Not that he's ever going to be at the magnitude of those two guys, but similar type of player where he can catch the ball. He's on the smaller side, so he can kind of dip into those little holes that some other running backs may not be able to get through. So I think there could be a lot of versatility in just playing him in some of those roles. And then also the kick, punt, return potential gives you somebody that you can bring in, can contribute immediately. Even if you don't want to play him in necessarily a running back position, I think he could line up and run some quick passes in the slot, quick screen passes. You could have him in kick and punt return situations. So there's just a lot of different areas of the field he can play. And I think in this draft specifically, there aren't very many running backs that are like that. I could actually see him going higher even than some of these guys I have ranked above him, simply because of the skill set he has is very unique compared to a lot of the other people in this class.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Again, it's going to be one of those like pick your flavor type. So it wouldn't surprise me if the way we have these guys ranked or how they're projected to go is not how they go, because the team's going to find a fit and a need and they're going to draft some of these players. So I agree. I think the future is bright for him as well. Nic Singleton, I believe you had 6. You had him after Kaytron Allen. I have Nic Singleton as my number 5 running back. What did you see with Nic Singleton?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was very close with the two of them. It's hard to watch because, you're watching the same team play against the exact same matchups. I went Allen just a little bit more because some of the things I talked about with him, but Singleton's kind of the opposite of that, where he has really good speed, very quick cuts. I don't think he is necessarily going to be an every down back either. I think he's still a little bit more change of pace, just in the opposite direction. But he's got much more of a big play threat. The guy that once he gets loose, you have a much greater opportunity that he's going to turn it into a big play. I think I just lean a little more Allen based off of what I saw between the two of them. But, I think Singleton can definitely play a role. And my biggest thing for him was just speed. I wrote all caps speed when I was looking at Singleton, because he's electric once he gets to the open field, and he can make safeties miss at a high level. So, I think once you get him past that first layer of defense, he's not typically going to shed linebackers all that well. But if you can get him one-on-one against corners, safeties, I think he could really be a problem for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off that because that's spot on. The problem with Singleton that I felt is the reason they use Kaytron Allen is on first and second down primarily a lot of the times is because I don't think as just a pure running back, like I think Nic Singleton lacks like the feel. The same way I thought Drew Aller lacked the feel to play quarterback. It's how I felt. And ironically enough, they play on the same team, which is crazy. So Nic Singleton just lacked the feel to be like a true between the tackles runner. Like he doesn't have great vision as a runner. But the problem, like the counterpart to that is, like you said, he's insanely explosive. He drives his legs so hard. He's 6'2", 225. So he's already a freak in terms of strength, but he's got so much breakaway speed. So I think the reason why they use him on third downs is he's great as a pass catcher, probably one of the best pass catchers from the running back position in the draft, and he's a great pass protector. So he does everything well that Kaytron Allen didn't, and Kaytron Allen basically did everything well that he didn't. That's why they were such a perfect pairing. So I think Singleton has an immediate role in the NFL. Third down running back, he can catch the football, and when he catches the football in open space, that's when he's at his best because he can make you miss. If you're getting him, 7 steps behind the line of scrimmage and handing the ball off, I worry that he just doesn't know how to dissect defenses, figure out where the open rushing lanes are, and hit those holes. That's his problem, and that's a big problem for a running back. So I do think maybe he could work on that. I highly doubt that, but I do think because of his third down skill set, it's an immediate, I can come in, I can be your third down back. Like if you have a Kaytron Allen type player on your team already, if you're the Browns and you have, why am I forgetting his name? Browns running back, big guy. Quinshon Judkins. If you have Quinshon Judkins and he's an insane first and second down guy and you're looking for a third down guy, enter Nic Singleton. So he has an immediate niche role, a niche that which he's really, really good at, that I think he can make an impact right away in day one. And that's why I have him 5. That's why I have him ahead of some of these other guys we talked about. Is these other guys do a little bit of things well, here and there, and they have some deficiencies in their game. Singleton definitely has deficiencies in his game, but what he does well, I think he does really, really well. So that's why I think he's going to be an immediate contributor, at least on third down. That's why he's my number 5 running back. But we have our top 4, Jake, pretty much identical. The only difference is you have Price 3rd, Coleman 2nd. But we both have Emmett Johnson at number 4. Talk to me a little bit about Emmett Johnson.
Yeah, this is where I think there's a little bit of flip in the class. Like I think this top 4, for me at least, is maybe a step above, one being kind of separated from the other 3. But this top 4 is where I think like these are guys that, maybe not first round picks, but just because of the positional value. But day 2 guys, I think is definitely some potential for a couple of these players. Emmett Johnson, I like him a lot. When I was watching the film on him, I just think he is an all around really good player. He can catch out of the backfield. He's an explosive runner. He got a ton of volume, so he's shown that he can handle a heavy workload. So this is a guy first on the list that I think could be a true every down running back for a team. And he's shown a lot of durability.
Yes.
So I think just overall, there's a ton to like about Emmett Johnson, and he's such a versatile player where you're not getting just one thing with him. They've used him in so many different ways. He really was the piece in that Nebraska offense, in my opinion. Not that the offense was incredible, but everything that offense had that was going well for it, Emmett Johnson was the center of that offense and ran it very well. So I think this is a guy that I think you could bring in day 1 and have him as a starter.
Completely agree. It can't go unnoticed how much they leaned on him and how productive he was. You brought up a great point. He's durable, right? He can pass, he can catch the ball out of the backfield, he can run the ball. And the best part is, as heavily as they use him, he was so good at protecting the football, barely fumbles the ball, right? So for a guy that touches the ball as much as he did, a guy that was utilized and asked to do as much as he was, he protected the hell out of the football. And my biggest knock on him is I don't think he's got the breakaway speed that, most people would want out of their true running back RB1, but he makes up for it with amazing agility, side to side lateral quickness. And he's got like these sweet feet, right? Like he's just constantly chopping his legs and he's able to just move side to side in a way that's super quick, like almost like Reggie Bush-esque. He's got that side to side lateral quickness. So it makes up for his inability to just like beat you going straight line. And so I think that's why he's still going to be able to get good yards, get the extra yard, whether he's not going to be able to break and, outrun some of these fast cornerbacks. I still think he's going to be incredibly productive because he doesn't have many weaknesses in his game as a running back at all. Like I was having a hard time finding a true weakness outside of straight line speed, which again, we've seen plenty of productive, really, really good top end running backs not have like a 4.3, 4.4 speed guy. So, there is so much to like with him. Again, 5'11", 200 pounds, so not undersized, just kind of like the right size for a running back. He does everything well. I'd have a hard time believing this guy would be a bust in the NFL.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know we had 3 and 2 switch, so I guess we can start with your 3, Jonah Coleman. What are your thoughts there? What did you see with him?
Again, we've already talked about David Montgomery, but this was the guy that I watched and I was like, this is David Montgomery. Like I watched Jonah Coleman and I was like, low center of gravity, right? So low to the ground. And that's why it makes him really tough to tackle. He breaks great tackles. He's got that like, that like quickness to juke the same way Montgomery has like the ability to make like one cut this way. He doesn't do it fast, but he's smart about when he does it and how he does it. And I think it really, really works well for him. And the other thing, great receiver out of the backfield, great receiver, not a burner, but he can do just about everything else. Catch the football, pass protect, run through the tackles, through the hole. Again, the low center of gravity there are so many running backs that don't have the athleticism that these other guys do. Big, fast, strong guys. Like not everybody's going to be like Derrick Henry, but when you don't have that size or that speed, how can you be an X factor? And this is how he's an X factor. He is just incredibly difficult to wrap up because he's playing so low to the ground. His legs are constantly turning. So even when you think you've got him tackled, he's still going to push for an extra yard or two. So we use David Montgomery a lot when it comes to draft prospects. I understand that and I get that. But this guy truly, I wrote down David Montgomery under his profile, because that's exactly who it reminded me of.
Yeah, I actually had another comp that I think I'm curious what your thoughts are. I wrote down Blake Corum as somebody that immediately jumped out as a player that I thought he played pretty similar to. Has a great knack for finding the end zone. I mean,
Yep.
he just is consistently in the end zone. He fumbled once in 400 touches. So incredibly consistent at holding on to the football. He's a really good change of pace runner. Not incredibly fast, but I think, really can play a great role. He's very consistent. This is a player that when I was watching, I was just like, wow, this is a guy that I would want on my team. He's somebody that can plug in and play immediately. I don't have any concerns with his ability to translate to the NFL level. I just think he has the perfect build for it. He has great vision. He's phenomenal down there in the red zone. So I just think all around player, that's why I have him at 2. He's my second favorite player in the class, as I just really see so much upside with him. And I don't even know that we've seen him get close to that peak yet. Yeah. I think there's still a lot of room for him to grow. Obviously, system will be dependent on that, but I think in the right system, I think he can really be a star player for a team.
Yeah, I agree. I was very back and forth between Coleman and Price in terms of who's going to be my number 2 running back. So I think they're kind of neck to neck. And maybe if we saw Price a little bit more and he wasn't playing behind Jeremiyah Love, people would be like, no, this is definitively the guy ahead of Jonah Coleman. But because we saw so much more of Jonah Coleman, I totally get why somebody would rank him ahead of him. But that leads me into Jadarian Price, my number 2 running back, your number 3 running back. Again, Notre Dame played behind Jeremiyah Love, basically, right? So the best running back in the class, he played behind him. This guy, the biggest thing that jumped off to me on tape is he's fast, but his speed to power, the way he starts his speed and then he can generate power from that and break tackles, run through a guy, it's so seamless. It's like so seamless. He's got the ability to generate speed, and then once he translates that speed into power, he's still fast, he's still moving really quickly, but he has enough power to run you over. So I think that's a really rare skill set to have, is to have a little bit of both. The problem is he did fumble the ball quite a bit, so he has to cut back on fumbling the football, and he's very unproven on third down. So I don't know how much his pass catching is going to really be utilized in the NFL, but his speed is seamless. His breakaway straight line speed is probably some of the best in the class, and his yards after contact, again, another guy that I thought was a great zone runner. So I know a lot of running backs, a lot of the NFL offenses now are implementing a zone running scheme. So a lot of these running backs are going to fit so perfectly in that. And Jadarian Price is another guy that I think if he lands in a spot where it's specifically that, he's going to excel tremendously, because he has the straight line speed and he has the ability, if somebody meets him in the hole while he's generating that speed, to quite literally just run them over. So a lot to like with him. I wish we got to see more of him. Unfortunately, he played behind the best prospect, the best running back prospect, and probably a top 5 prospect in this class in Jeremiyah Love.
Yeah, and that's a big reason, exactly what you're saying there, is that I had Coleman there, is just seeing that consistency a little bit more. I've seen a lot more of him. Price, you just wonder, is it because he couldn't play that role, or just because he didn't have the opportunity to play that role? I mean, he has unbelievable speed, huge playmaker. He also returned kicks and punts for them quite a bit. I think he's like in the top 2 or 3 as far as punt return, kick return touchdowns in Notre Dame history. Wow. So he definitely has a ton of big play potential in that regard as well. So I could see him being a huge asset for a team and coming in, returning kicks, returning punts for them immediately. My biggest thing would just be the durability. I just wanted to see a little bit more of seeing him as a consistent running back. Obviously, that was never going to be the case at Notre Dame when you're behind a player like Jeremiyah Love. But that was the biggest reason I had the 2 flipped. I think you'd be fine going either way. It's just more so which player fits the scheme that you're looking for. But I think another player that's going to be an immediate contributor to a team, even if it's just in the kick and punt return game, I think there's so much opportunity for him to come in and contribute immediately.
Yep, I absolutely agree. And that brings us to the guy he played behind for most of the year, Jeremiyah Love, the number 1 prospect, Notre Dame running back, 6 foot, 215 pounds. Jake, why is he our number 1 running back prospect, and consensus probably the number 1 running back prospect this year?
Yeah, I mean, for Jeremiyah Love, I think this is just an insanely elite prospect. I mean, for me personally, when I'm doing my draft rankings, he is the number 1 player in this class. Wow. So my top 3 is probably him, Caleb Downs, and Fernando Mendoza, just because of positional value, all the great things I've seen about with him as well that we talked about last week. But for me, I think Jeremiyah Love is the player that if I had to put all of my money on somebody being successful and being all pro level talent in the NFL, I would be willing to push my chips in on Jeremiyah Love being that prospect. I don't think necessarily is he Bijan level coming out. maybe not quite to that level.
Yeah.
Me personally, I would rank him higher than Ashton Jeanty coming out. I know that's a bold claim. Jeanty obviously put up video game numbers at Boise State. But what I saw out of Jeremiyah Love, I think, in your dynasty leagues, if you're drafting rookies, I think this is the clearest 1-1 you could possibly have. This is probably a player you consider taking on the turn, depending on where he gets drafted in your redraft leagues. I can't say enough about how elite of a prospect I think Jeremiyah Love is. And when I watch him, I don't see many holes in the game. I'm sitting here looking for things where I say like, oh, I don't like that he does this. And that never comes up when I'm watching Jeremiyah Love play. Everything he's doing, he has great vision, great speed, great power. Everything he does just looks at the top end. This is a player I'd be shocked if he was not an all-pro level player at some point in his career.
Yeah, completely agree. Almost every bullet point I had has the word elite in it somewhere. So it's almost like elite prospect, elite ball security, fluid, explosive. He's physically gifted. He's such a good processor of what the defense is doing. He's got obviously 3-down potential with breakaway speed. My favorite thing is there are times where he has a great amount of patience, like he's being very patient. And then there are times where he plays with like a sense of urgency. It's almost like he's patient, sees the hole, and then he's like urgent. He's like, I got to get through that. And again, he has the breakaway speed and that explosiveness to like jet through those holes, right? So you're like, if you're a defense, you're like waiting. You're being a little bit patient. And the minute you get flat-footed, boom, he's gone. He's basically just bursting through that hole and you're not going to be able to catch him. So this is such a crazy comp. Like it almost feels unfair to Jeremiyah Love, but he reminds me, he's 6 foot 215, but he plays with the same level of quickness as like a Jahmyr Gibbs. And think about how terrifying that is. It's almost like he reminds me of like a Jahmyr Gibbs with Reggie Bush hybrid. And that seems like such an unfair comparison. And that feels like such an unfair thing to say about him, but he is that good. I agree. The more I watched him, when you had talked about him before I went through my running back prospects and watched the film, you were saying you had him above Jeanty, and I was like, damn, that's pretty crazy. And then I went back and watched it, and I was like, damn, he's probably right. And so I agree with you. I do think he's probably better than Jeanty from a prospect standpoint. I don't know if he's quite Bijan because Bijan was very, very just kind of on his own. But I do think he can come into the NFL and have similar levels of production that Bijan Robinson's having, because like you said, I watched his film and I could not find anything that was weakness. I couldn't. There wasn't even anything that was like, it's not as good as the other stuff. Everything he did spectacularly. So I mean, I don't fault you for him being your number one prospect in the entire class, because if it wasn't for him playing the running back position, this guy could easily go 1-1 in the NFL draft, and I wouldn't bat an eye at all. So I love
He's a player I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be upset if the Jets decided to move on from Breece and it felt like he was worthy of the number 2 pick. That's how highly I think of Jeremiyah Love. They have a lot of other needs, but I was thinking about their offensive line and how talented their front 5 is actually pretty strong. If you threw a player like Jeremiyah Love in behind that offensive line, I think he could be an absolute freak for them. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think more than likely you'll probably see him go. I don't think he makes it to 10. I would be very shocked if he's still sitting on the board at 10. If so, it's a monster steal to get him that low. But this is a player like
it's one of those things where before all of the season ended and everything, the mocks all had him going 18 to the Vikings. And I was like, shit, I would be ecstatic, but he's not going to fall that far. I don't see a world where he falls that far. The problem here is, Jake, for the rest of the NFL, if he makes it to 9, do the Kansas City Chiefs take him? And at that point, are we all screwed?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a big fear that the Saints are going to try to go get him at their pick. And that would be a nightmare for me in the division, having to watch Jeremiyah Love just rip us to shreds for years to come. So I'm hoping, I guess the last running back to go that high as 2, Barkley, right? He went pretty high. And then Jeanty was 6 last year. But I won't be surprised at all if he's a top 5 player in this class. It's really just dependent on what these teams are really looking for, what needs they have. But if you're just looking for best player available, this is a guy that I think is a no-brainer, can contribute and make your offense immediately better.
Yep, absolutely agree. I agree. I don't see a weakness. I don't see a world where he's a bust. Like, he's going to come in and be an absolute stud. The team that drafts him, starter from day one. three down running back, doesn't have many injury concerns. So it's just like he is the prototypical prospect, especially if you consider we're in a weaker overall draft class anyways. There's no reason this guy shouldn't be a top 10 pick. Like you said, I wouldn't be upset if he's a top 5 pick either, but let's just pray that the Chiefs don't somehow get him at 9, because the rest of the NFL would be screwed at that point if that were to happen. But that is it, man. Did you have anything else to add about any other running back you may have watched or we may not have discussed?
I don't think so. I mean, I think what we've kind of went through is there's a lot of depth here at the running back position, not a lot of high-end contributors, but I think this top group is really strong. Really excited to get to the receivers next week. I think that's going to be a really good episode. I've already started kind of doing some prep on those, so really excited to talk through those. And I think, especially for these dynasty drafts, if you're in dynasty leagues, if you have some of these first-round picks, I think definitely going to be an episode worth watching. There's a lot of talent in this class for the receiver group.
Yup, absolutely. That's a great segue. Next week, we're going to do our top 10 receivers. It is the receiver, and I think defense is probably the best in the class. So there will be a lot of good receivers and a lot of good talent to talk about. Again, if you're watching, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It helps spread the word. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok's where our socials are. I'm Swikar. That is my good buddy, Jake. Thank you guys so much for watching another episode. We're back next week doing the receivers. Thank you guys. See you.